This time is different. Now, I know, you've heard it a dozen times already, but in today's video, I'm going to be going through Bitcoin's technical analysis, showing you what has happened in the past and what could potentially be different about this time around. Let's roll that intro. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another Bitcoin video update. Today we are of course going to be taking a look at the macro view for Bitcoin. Obviously yesterday we saw Bitcoin rallying up past $50,000. Big breakthrough. Big fantastic break to the upside, and it's great to kind of see. We can also take a look at that here on our 4-hour time frame with our midway trend line here in our ascending wedge, and we can see that we broke up above $50,000, right? We spoke about all that yesterday, but today I want to focus in on why we might be in different times, right? We often hear that this kind of comes up all the time with people saying, oh, this time is different. We're going to do X, Y, and Z. This time is different. And well, I'm going to be showing you, some data inside the charts as to why the people kind of laugh at the idea that this time is different from previous cycles, but also why some people are more bullish on Bitcoin, believing that this time in fact is different. I'll let you guys decide and let me know in the comments down below what side of the argument you fall on. And as I get into today's video, smash that like button. I do appreciate that. If you're new, subscribe. Let's jump into it. So Bitcoin here on the 1-day time frame, we're using Bitcoin paired up with US dollar, and we're on the Bitstamp data source, right? So here we can see we have the first halving, the second halving, the third, and the fourth, which is yet to happen, approximately the 22nd of April 2024, right? And so what's interesting about these halving events is how Bitcoin's price has reacted both before the halving event and after. Okay, and there's a few things that I want to focus in on specifically with these halving events and what has happened to the price action. So we're going to come over to our first Bitcoin halving event, this one over here. This happened on the 28th of November 2012, I believe, right? Or at least somewhere around this date. You can see here that some interesting things happened, right? So we have an all-time high date for Bitcoin right up here. It was $15. It collapsed down and rallied back up. Now it did hit a new all-time high just here before the Bitcoin halving event, okay? But this was very early days. When this happened, it was very much that there wasn't much Bitcoin supply, so a little bit of demand can come on in and it can take the Bitcoin price higher. Okay, in the early stages of Bitcoin's life, it was very easy for people to accumulate vast amounts of BTC, and there wasn't really a huge amount of supply at that time because you're basically brand new. Mining operations, miners were earning a substantial amount of BTC, and basically as demand came in, it was really easy to kind of create an imbalance between the supply and the demand. So inside our chart here, we can see that on this kind of very first Bitcoin halving event, we had an all-time high before the actual halving event happened. Okay, so that's your first one. It's an interesting one. We'll leave it there and move on over. We'll come on over to the second Bitcoin halving. The second Bitcoin halving here happened in July of 2016. Now, if I zoom in on this, you can see that the Bitcoin's all-time high happened before the halving. We have the bear market leading us up into the Bitcoin halving event. And we can see right here that we failed to reach a new all-time high before the halving happened, okay? And so this is really where things get more interesting. This is mainly because at this point in Bitcoin's life cycle, this is the point where there's actually a significant amount of supply of Bitcoin, and it actually requires a lot more demand to come on in to create those imbalances and send the Bitcoin price rocketing to the upside. Okay, so knowing that we had this all-time high up here at $1,141 back over in 2013, we had our bear market low. We rallied up towards our Bitcoin halving event, but failed to go into a new all-time high beforehand. During the Bitcoin halving event, we actually see a collapse of price before we rally on upwards. Okay. And this is also something that we can kind of see just briefly here in the same way that we see here as well. It's usually quite negative just after the halving, a bit of like the sell the news event, and then bam, next thing you know, you are rocketing to the upside, right? So great to kind of see here that we've got two different scenarios that kind of unfold, right? One over this side in the very first kind of Bitcoin halving event where we have an all-time high, we get the actual pendulum, have an all-time high. We hit a new all-time high before the halving, okay? Then over here in 2016, when we had that halving, right, we had our all-time high of 2013, but we failed to reach above the all-time high during that lead up to the Bitcoin halving event, right? So two different scenarios, one very early stage, one with a lot more circulating supply. So you can start to kind of get you an idea as to kind of what's going on, at least in your opinion on that one, right? Let's move on over to the next Bitcoin halving event, right? The third Bitcoin halving event. This happened in May 2020, right? So here we have our all-time high from 2017. Okay, we have our bear market low of 2018. We rally on up before our Bitcoin halving event, but again, we failed to go up to the all-time high being 19,666 USD. And then, of course, we come and collapse down before the Bitcoin halving event. We rally back up for the halving. We go sideways after the halving, and then bam, we're off to the races, and we hit a new all-time high. Okay, so we have 2 out of 3 Bitcoin halving events that basically have told us that we do not have a new all-time high before the Bitcoin halving event has happened. And again, we can see how close we were in relation to the all-time high depending on the supply. We actually got a reasonable way up here, okay, towards our all-time high before we had our collapse, right? So with all-time high in, let me actually zoom in to make this a little bit clearer for you guys, right? All-time high in 2017, just here, right, 19,666. We have our rally after the bear market of 2018 coming in here at 13,880. Okay, here we can see that we got close to the all-time high. We were only 41% away from it. Instead, though, what we actually saw after this really significant run to the upside was a collapse down by 72.26%. Now, during that move, lots of things happened. We'll probably talk about that in a moment, okay? But it's interesting. If we come back again over to here, where we have our 2013 high, okay, we have a rally. Again, it was pretty significant up towards then before the Bitcoin halving event. Up here, this was $779, and we got to a point where we were 49% away from the all-time high. Okay, so we have two relatively similar kind of levels here. We rally up before the Bitcoin halving where we get close to the all-time high around kind of 49%, 40%. And of course, you know, here we are in, breaking out into 2021. We have a double peak high, very similar to what we saw in 2013. And the all-time high set up there, of course, at 69, I know it is, but let me go see what it is on the dollar. I've got this not quite snapped onto the right wick. That one there, $69,000. So we can see that right there. Okay, now we've rallied on up before the next halving. Like the fourth Bitcoin halving here is due to happen in April 2024. Right, we've rallied on up, but how far are we away from our previous all-time high? Currently, about 37%. Now, the question is, are we going to be doing something different this time around? And it's for you guys to decide. I'm not going to have the magical answer for everyone here, but are we going to be repeating history here? Is Bitcoin going to be correcting down as per the last 2 that we saw before the halving? Okay, and of course, you know, what does that look like? Now, in the kind of lead ups to most of these, we have seen very similar kind of runs, right? Good growth, and we're getting close to the previous all-time high. However, in the last 2, we failed to reach a new all-time high before the Bitcoin halving event. Okay, now we can get real close to the halving event. Okay, and this could be complete bullshit as well. We have to understand that maybe there's absolutely zero correlation to the rallies up before the Bitcoin halving event, right? Maybe the Bitcoin halving event has absolutely no correlation to price movement whatsoever. Again, this splits opinions, so let me know what yours are in the comments below. Now, as we kind of come back into our charts here, we have to consider maybe a retracement is likely. Let's actually go back to what happened in the previous cycle, right? We got 41% close to the all-time high, and then we rejected down 72%. Now, we know that obviously COVID and the pandemic happened during this time, but do you guys know what else happened right inside here with this correction? Anyone in the comment section who says Fed pivot? That's correct. And essentially here we saw the Federal Reserve lowering interest rates. During this pandemic, they needed to print money and they needed to lower interest rates and they needed to save a lot of businesses. Okay, so lowering interest rates during this time, a pivot basically, and basically loosening of monetary policy led to overprinting. Overprinting obviously led to inflation and so forth. But we are also expecting, with how the interest rates have been on the kind of increase and stalling out in the bear market and even into the start of this bull market, we are waiting for the Federal Reserve to pivot. The Federal Reserve pivot is incredibly bullish. We want that. But it's going to happen when the market really doesn't generally or isn't in a really good strong position, and as such we tend to find is corrections, and so the stock market tends to correct down, overcorrecting. High risk assets like cryptocurrencies will overcorrect as well, and you see these kind of movements. Now, all in fairness, if it wasn't for the pandemic, I think this correction would have actually eased off at approximately about 50 or so percent. I can see if I can snap this actually into the correct wick here by zooming in. If I grab hold of our chart here, it should have eased right about here where we started to see this rally. So about 53%. That there is exactly what should have happened. Now, obviously, we saw a brief rally and another collapse led by the pandemic. But if we kind of think about here what that might look like, that could actually be pretty disastrous. I wouldn't want us to see, something like a 50% move. I'd be more comfortable with around that kind of 39%. But obviously, the higher that this pushes, the more percentage points to the downside it is likely to be. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see how that plays out. But you can let me know what your thoughts are on where you sit with this argument. Is history repeating itself? And, basically here we will not be seeing a new all-time high before the halving? Or do you think there's not enough data? We're rewriting Bitcoin's history. And in fact, we are doing something different this time around. If you're looking for a little bit more in-depth analysis over BTC, then why not check out this video here where I go through the TA for Bitcoin on the 4-hour time frame.